China's League of Legends League is canceled until further notice, all because of a deadly virus that's been making headlines. This is a very serious, very crazy story, so let's just get right into it. Alright, so first the esports part of this news. Week 2 of the LPL has been indefinitely delayed because of the coronavirus, which is a deadly virus that's been ravaging parts of China, and we'll get to more about that in a moment. The LPL was already on break for Lunar New Year, but when news of the virus began to spread, and the virus itself began to spread, the LPL chose to delay Week 2 of games indefinitely in order to better protect the health and safety of their fans and players. Notably, the LDL, which is China's version of the Academy League, is also delayed indefinitely. As for when things will be back, well, we reached out to Riot Games and got this comment. Our team in China is working closely with authorities there and will continue to monitor the situation on a daily basis. There are a few more esports events that have been or could be impacted by the Chinese government's reaction to the coronavirus outbreak. First will be WESG's CSGO APAC Finals in Macau, which was canceled last Wednesday. The event was supposed to run from February 16th to 18th, and WESG has yet to announce if they'll be holding a replacement event elsewhere. There are also 3 Overwatch League teams based in China, the Chengdu Hunters, the Shanghai Dragons, and the Hangzhou Spark, who are all scheduled to host games in China this year. Some homestands are even coming up as soon as February. None of the teams, nor Blizzard, has made any statements about whether they'll be delaying those homestands or canceling them entirely or continuing as planned. So what is the coronavirus? Well, the virus we're hearing about right now is actually a specific strain of coronavirus, one that we've never encountered before.
Many fear the situation is already far worse than government officials are telling them. In Hong Kong, for instance, where they still remember the huge toll from the SARS virus.
If you've ever heard of SARS, that was actually another novel strain of coronavirus that we had never encountered before when it broke out in the early 2000s. And if you haven't heard of it or are too young to remember the outbreak, it was a disease that spread out of Asia in the early 2000s and killed about 774 people, mostly in China and Hong Kong. SARS is another thing that I'll get back to a little bit later in this video. Anyway, most coronaviruses began in animals, and this particular strain is believed to have originated at a seafood market in Wuhan, which is the 6th largest city in China. This specific food market was closed on January 1st after the first symptoms were discovered on December 8th. However, some reports from Chinese researchers have found that 13 of the 41 first cases of this strain of coronavirus may not have originated in the market, so it's still relatively unclear where this virus originated. Anyway, the World Health Organization received its first reports from Chinese officials on December 31st when they reported that there was an outbreak in Wuhan. A few weeks later, there were 600 confirmed cases in China and 18 deaths. On January 23rd, the Chinese government expanded the quarantine from Wuhan to Huanggang and Aizhou. These 3 cities account for nearly 20 million people. That's more than the entire population of the Netherlands, if you want a little bit of perspective.
What you're seeing here is really being replicated all over the country. People are worried about leaving their homes, and they're concerned. So the government has been taking many more aggressive measures to try to contain what they've described as the strengthening virus.
Within the quarantine zone, people are not allowed to take any public transit. A lot of the city is on lockdown. Supermarkets have been pretty much cleaned out of all their food, and people have been urged to stay indoors and avoid public places. As of recording, there have been nearly 3,000 confirmed cases and at least 80 deaths as a result of the virus that's now being referred to as 2019 NCOV. Those numbers are according to the New York Times. We've also learned that the virus can now transfer from person to person, not just animal to person, which is what's led to stuff like the quarantines and, of course, the LPL delaying games, given that all their games happen in public places. We already mentioned the quarantine in Wuhan, a city that's larger than New York, but the Chinese government has also canceled inter-province bus services, they've suspended tours within China, and the Hong Kong government has declared a state of emergency and closed schools for at least 3 weeks. Things are getting very serious. The US government has also begun screening people coming in from Wuhan to the States, and the government is also working on getting Americans out of Wuhan.
Starting tonight, we're going to begin screening passengers arriving from Wuhan into the United States at the 3 airports that see the majority of those passengers. The airports are JFK, San Francisco, and Los Angeles.
And one of the English language casters for the LPL, Munch, tweeted out that he and the majority of the English language LPL caster desk are leaving China.
We're getting the fuck out of here.
We're leaving. We're going back to our own country. Where are you going? You're going back to...
I'm going to the UK.
UK, Australia.
And the Irish boys.
The Irish boys are going back home as well. So for safety, let's Joe was saying,
Yeah.
it's better to lose.
We're currently, none of us are showing any symptoms currently, so don't worry about us in terms of that stuff.
Neither is
but-
Clement, by the way, which
Neither
is
is
not a
Clement.
good sign.
The thing here is, though, that it's not we're going home and not coming back. We will be back eventually. Now,
Yeah.
it does kick off. We just aren't sure when that's going to be.
The reaction to this strain of the coronavirus is relatively similar to SARS, which, as I mentioned, was a strain of the coronavirus that spread across Asia and around the world in the early 2000s. Now, researchers eventually found that SARS originated in bats from the Yunnan province of China, but at the end of the day, it was a relatively rare disease and was declared contained in 2003, pretty shortly after the outbreak was first reported. One of the major outbreak locations for SARS outside of China was Toronto, which is where I'm from, and I remember that people were extremely concerned during the outbreak. Now we're in a similar situation, with a lot of panic around the globe and people working to help people, which has led to things like the LPL getting caught up in the situation. Notably, former pro player and EDG coach Clearlove is from Wuhan, and it appears, according to the translations at least, that he's streaming from there right now. On top of that, the inter-province bus network is down right now due to the quarantines, so it may be difficult for LPL players to get back to their team's headquarters when the LPL starts back up again.
It's all very new, says the deputy director of China's National Health Commission, Li Bin. Our knowledge is limited, and the epidemic is not in control.
We haven't actually been able to confirm if there are any other players in the LPL who are in the quarantine zone or are otherwise affected, so we're just hoping that everyone is safe.
Thanks for watching. If you want more content like this, hit the sub button and ring that notification bell. For unique bite-sized videos you won't find anywhere else, hit up our Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook pages.